So let's now move to the next presentation by Professor Ivan Koprić. Ivan Koprić is Professor of Law and Public Administration at the University of Zagreb. Is also a member of the board of a PhD program we organize in Padova together with all the universities, including Zagreb. He's an expert in administrative procedures and justice, administrative reforms, and so on.
Buongiorno. Buongiorno. Dobro jutro. Dobro jutro. Good morning, dear colleagues. I will present now about a need for innovative local policies and redefined human rights in contemporary Europe. I put new citizenship as the first notion, which is very important according to my assessment for this discussion, debate about innovative local policies and human rights. So I prepared few pictures to show you some characteristics of the world in which we live in. So in first picture you can see beach, pleasant area, but with human corpses. Maybe it's time to remind us to recall that 17,306 people have drowned trying to reach the coast of Europe. And some of them succeeded, but they now stand or walk in the snow without boots, without socks, probably without hope. Also on our beaches with corpse or human and animal corpses, we can see piles of plastics, garbage, even drugs. And last summer in Sweden, we saw horrific, frightful wildfires caused by climate changes. Few years ago in Bosnia, in Croatia, in Bosnia, in Serbia, we saw a flooded village after the levee on the river Sava was destroyed, also with floating animal and human cadavers. So what about the world in which we all live? We live in the world of wicked problems, problems which are difficult to resolve, not evil in itself, but difficult to resolve because they endanger our local communities of people, and in that regard they call for innovative local policies, and they endanger human rights, and they in that way call for their redefining and strengthening in our Europe, in our world. The term was coined by Horst Rittel in mid-60s to denote ill-defined problems of planning, but characteristics which we associate with wicked problems are complexity, dynamics, non-linearity, and perplexity. So we know that these problems may occur, they are generally known, but not predictable, at least not in individual cases. So causality is undefined, and we have serious hardships in responding to these problems. Not only floods and wildfires, but terrorist attacks, wars, other types of natural disasters like earthquakes, tsunamis, huge migration waves, mass shootings, pollution, poverty, hunger in some cities, some parts of cities, epidemics, climate change, economic crisis, etc. So in this world, we are creating new citizenship. According to my assessment, we have three components of this new citizenship. Diversity. Diversity is the first one, then value complexity, and the third one is integration, specific, particular type of integration in contemporary Europe. So, to start with diversity, Europe is a space of great and increasing diversity in terms of national identities, in terms of religious complexity, in terms of linguistic varieties, in terms of cultural identities, political ideas and concepts. We are witnessing changes in share of various races, gender issues, sexual identities, social stratification in terms of educational background, in terms of type of employment, and so on and so on. And European diversity is not the new fact, it's an old fact. But today, this diversity is increasing. We have many new classes of people in Europe. And of course, as Director Masha said in his opening speech, we have various value assessments of diversity. Some people tend to say that diversity is accentuated potentials, diversity is richness, we can learn from each other, we can use that as a resource, but other groups of people, other actors, political actors, tend to say that diversity in contemporary Europe is a problem and will cause more problems probably in the future. Diversity doesn't describe a stable status, rather it's a process of continuous changes and increase of social complexity, so we can speak about fractionalization of society. And these changes occur in non-linear manner. So processes are irregular, hard to be predicted. We have periods of slow and gradual development, I will say periods of normal life, normal complexity. They vary in duration, so we have shorter periods, longer periods of normality in our society. Then these gradual development ends in faster or slower waves of changes that tend to break the previous picture of diversity, the previous picture of our societies in terms of war, in terms of migration, massive migration waves, in terms of natural disasters and everything else I mentioned as wicked problems. And of course, there are some attempts to reduce diversity. In our history, we know we had tragic attempts to reduce diversity. In some points, some people tend to live with other people with blue eyes and white skin, not with other types of people. So we have different attempts of reducing diversity. Then development of the new values. The new values develop constantly in response to these challenges, wicked problems, and on the waves of considerations about what is relevant today in our societies and what will be relevant for the people in the future. So this is mainly politics and public debate about what is important in our societies, in our countries, in contemporary Europe. New values are crystallized through social interaction and through political processes. They are, values are governance pillars, so strong and firm governance pillars, but not unchangeable. We are continuously debated them, considered, modified them, adapted them to the new social expectations of citizens, social expectation of general public, but in reality what we have is adaptation of this picture of new values to the will, to the attitudes of powerful political actors. Values are integrating forces of governance systems because governance systems gain and should gain legitimacy in their respective social environments. So this is two-side game. The process of adaptation of changing circumstances, to changing issues and problems of contemporary Europe has caused previously unthinkable value complexity in Europe. I think we are witnessing unique situation in Europe today. We have roughly 5 groups of public values: political or democratic values, from accountability to legitimacy; legal values, from the rule of law to due process; economic values, from, 3 E's to quality of public services; welfare values, from social justice to protection of minorities; and ecological values, from protection of natural environment to life in harmony with nature. So huge list, huge value diversity in contemporary Europe. These groups have developed roughly from political at the end of, democratic values at the end of 18th century, through welfare values at the end of 19th century, to ecological values at the end of 20th century. But are we really united in value heterogeneity? Are we really united in value heterogeneity in Europe? You can easily recall the motto of the European Union, which was used from the beginning, have been used from the beginning of 2000s: united in diversity, united in diversity, united in value heterogeneity. We still have, I will say, and you can easily oppose, but we still have continental European space with stress on democratic, legal, and welfare values, and Anglo-Saxon space with stress on economic values, pragmatism, because at one point Anglo-Saxon world faced brutal, I will say, economic and social situation. Not today, of course, but in their history. Some examples of new values or development of new values or reinterpretation of values. For example, in political sphere, we move from participation of old style, relying on referenda, citizen initiative, and so on, to new expectations, new tools, new instruments, new channels of expressing political attitudes and political opinions through internet forums, focus groups, social networks, and so on. So we should take this huge change into account. Or in economic sphere, we move from state support to industrial production, state support to massive agricultural interventions, growth and development, to sustainable development, even degrowth. Today we are speaking about degrowth, and healing the environment after the Industrial Revolution. Integration in contemporary Europe, we can see trends and forces relying on the predominantly economic integration, with economic argumentation and economic justification of integration, but with significant structure that consists also of political, legal, governance, administrative, institutional, and cultural components. So this is not now only economic type of integration. It's wide range of various types of integration in current contemporary Europe. What we also have, digital technology, which enables and fosters networking and horizontal integration of people. In the whole world, these internet possibilities are now enormous, and new development of technology will probably open new possibilities of networking and new challenges to us. Probably we will speak in 10 years or in 20 years not only about human rights, maybe about rights of robots, artificial intelligence units, or something else. So we are witnessing great development of technology. We can speak in these conditions about connectivization, so formation, occurrence, appearance of various networks that link and associate people and other subjects, including very powerful social networks. We are trying to neglect them from time to time, but they are very powerful networks and tools for some purposes. So, to conclude, economic integration becomes also prominent in today's world through tighter connections, faster exchange, new types of industries, new development in some industries, and so on and so on. But along with economic integration, we have institutional, legal, and cultural ties which have become much more denser than previously. Formal Europeanization or Europeanization focused on some organizational form, we can easily see three phases in development of Europeanization. In first phase, we saw three European communities as the international economic organizations, or we tended at that time to interpret three organizations as one organization in hand of member states. So member states were very powerful, coordinating a limited number of policies within economic sphere. Then in second phase, we can see European governance, so governance from the top down manner of governance from European bodies to national states, and beginning of political integration of Europe. And in third phase, we can speak about real Europeanization, so from the end of 90s onwards, with various components including policies, politics, and polity. Policies, so common policies, in many new areas, not only economic policies. Then EU influence on politics, on political processes at national and subnational level, and EU influence on polity, meaning institutions, political, economic, and other institutions at national and subnational level. And I personally think that the last point here is of enormous importance. What we have today in Europe is new European discourse and new expectations of citizens of Europe. They wish the same level and quality of public services, regardless of country in which they have residence. So this is very, very powerful tool for making new area, new European citizenship, new integration in Europe. This is only a reminder that at the beginning of 90s, so 25 years ago, European community gained legal identity by the Maastricht Treaty, which was signed in 1992. At that time, European community was transformed to European Union. At that time, member states' citizens gained European citizenship, new directly elected parliament, and ability to bring cases directly to European Court of Justice. This European citizenship is very important in legal terms because it affords rights, freedoms, and legal protections to all European citizens. So they have now one more level at which they can rely in their fight for rights, freedoms, protection, and so on and so on. And of course, from Lisbon Treaty, we have very important Charter of Fundamental Rights, then Citizens' Initiative, and right to vote in local elections regardless of your citizenship, but based on your residence. So you can vote in Croatia if you have residence in Croatia, regardless of your citizenship. So to conclude, new citizenship in Europe is a combination, according to my perception, of increasing diversity, of new values, and particular type of integration which we have in Europe. What about local policy in that new, I will say, new settings? Wicked problems, all the components of new citizenship impose a need for innovative local policies. People tend to rely on tradition, on way of doing things they use with. But now it's time to innovate. So important and difficult problems and challenges of new citizenship, I mean new diversity, all these wicked problems, and so on, reflects first and foremost at the local level. Because we all live at that level. When you hear our politicians debating political concepts, various political concepts, you or I have perception that they live somewhere else, not in real world. Real world is local world. We all live local, at local level. What we wish from our municipalities in circumstances as I described, we wish security, solidarity, employment, support, engagement, quality of public services, political participation and influence, identity, cultural tradition. We search for acceptance, for self-realization in terms of cultural and artistic activities, and so on and so on. That's huge task for municipalities, for cities, for provinces, or other types of local units. So for that, we need local institutions with solid capacity in terms of personnel, organizations, and financial resources. And of course, we need appropriate local policies, not old local policies, not traditional local policies. We can observe, at least in some parts of Europe, decentralization trend. We can easily recall the EU principle of subsidiarity. We know about the concept of multi-level governance. All them accentuate the significance of local policies and local self-government in general, the role of local self-government. There is a massive legal and institutional framework in Europe that has some harmonizing effects on local governments. This framework was or has been created by European Union and Council of Europe. So local governments are not left without support, despite the fact that local level is neglected in European Union. That's fact. European Union doesn't have local governments in focus. Some other institutions, problems, and processes are in focus of European Union. But anyhow, there is some support. Within this common framework, municipalities need to find their own way, their own ways, innovative ways of dealing with all these problems, challenges, and issues. And of course, we can see increasing pressure on municipalities from both national level and EU level to be more effective, to be more responsive, but with less public money. That's, I think, constant component of both national policies and EU policy with regard to local governments. I listed here several new local policies or proposals for innovative local policies. There is a window of opportunity for local units. They should be engaged with new problems, with new challenges, and if so, they will develop innovative local policies. Integration of migrants, be they political or economic. We have also economic migrants, not only political. Raising the capacity of local communities for mutual adjustment of newcomers and domestic people. So we don't need to integrate, to absorb migrants. We should adjust to them. That this is two-way process of mutual adjustment. Sustainable development. Local units should work on ecology standards, should try to heal environment, protect and recovering healthy conditions of life. Probably they should abandon support to growth and think about degrowth. Protecting community solidarity while balancing private and public sectors in provision of local services. Probably this is the hardest task of our local governments, how to balance private and public sector in provision of services, provision of local services. designing and boosting new local identities while protecting and recovering the old ones. This identity issue is very, very important for all of us. Urban renewal efforts and policy, landscape protection, responsive participative governance, simplification and debureaucratization in provision of administrative and similar services. So the whole range of possibilities for our municipalities, for our cities to develop innovative local policies. I will stick with the European Charter of Fundamental Rights as the main and very important legal document for human rights in contemporary Europe. The Charter reaffirms the European Convention for the Protection of Human Rights and Fundamental Freedoms. It rephrases and widens the list of fundamental rights. It recognizes the European diversity in preamble and guarantees that the Union shall respect diversity, cultural, religious and linguistic diversity. It mentions public authorities at local level and guarantees the right to vote and to stand as a candidate, as I said, at municipal elections. It recognizes and respects access to services of general economic interest, former public services such as telecommunication, transport, and some others, a long list of these economic services today according to European legal documents and practice of European Court. The Charter establishes the right to good administration. That's a revolution. For first time in history, one document provides for the right to good administration. The right to good administration. The Charter also comprises several rights under Title Solidarity, including workers' and social rights. It provides for environmental protection. It calls for quality of environment. It provides for consumer protection. It inclines in text to the concept of sustainable development. And it constitutes the European governance on two groups of human rights. One group are rights connected with democratic participation of citizens, working with input legitimacy, government by the people, and another group are rights to good administration and some connected rights which work with output legitimacy, how EU bodies will work, how government can be for the people in terms of Fritz Sharp. Many of the mentioned rights haven't been guaranteed by the document of such legal value and significance, because the European Charter of Fundamental Rights is a constituent part of the Lisbon Treaty. Many of them, many of these rights are guaranteed to everyone, not only European citizens, so everyone. That's very important, that's a huge step forward. It applies to the institutions and bodies of the EU, but also to national authorities when they are implementing the EU law. It responds to some, to conclude, it responds to some new challenges and wicked problems, but not to all of them, I will say. Some of these rights are still designed, still in text, in script, as in an old-fashioned manner. So there is a need for redefining and complementing the list of human rights. And I have some proposals. First of all, maybe we should think about the right to decentralized governance. the right to decentralized governance. I know we have European Charter of Local Self-Government and many other documents of Council Europe, but there is no the right to decentralized governance. Maybe the right to effective participation in local affairs, from agenda setting to e-democracy to co-production. Rights of migrants to access the wanted territory, not only right of migrants to ask for asylum, but to access the territory. That's problem in our countries. You can see fences, you can see police forces, even armies at national borders, which prevent migrants to access the wanted territory. A right of migrants to be integrated or to be part of new communities. A right to enjoy and protect identity and cultural tradition. A right to healthy local environment. That's very important for all of us. A right to good administration should, according to my assessment, be extended as to cover not only national but also regional and local levels, and should include right to easy access to administrative services through one-stop shops, by debureaucratization, by reduction of stamps and fees, and so on and so on. And I think it's very important that climate and landscape protection should be guaranteed in Europe, and that EU and all of us, all our actors, think about urbanity protection. That's very important. You can see cities with animals in the city now, after some wars, after some changes of social structure, and so on and so on. So we should fight for urbanity. And I will finish with questions, not with definite answers. Which of these, or some other, or differently named or redefined rights can be guaranteed? Who will do that? Which political actors will do that? And why? Why? That's a very important question. Which instruments should be invented for their realization, for the realization of these new rights I proposed? Are these instruments doable? Are these new rights realistic? It's very easy for me to talk about new rights, but is this list really achievable in real situation, in real political processes in contemporary Europe? And probably the most important, who will pay for their realization? Who will pay for that? Of course, how to ensure that existing rights are respected and realized? That's also a problem, huge problem, I will say. From local perspective, is there anything we can do to improve the system of monitoring human rights realization at that level, at local level, regional, provinces level? And last question, what about capacities of municipalities and cities for effective realization of the new rights? We have countries with a lot of small municipalities with actually no capacity to deal with serious problems. Grazie mille.